Hi everyone, Desert Mermaid here. This is the channel, The Desert Mermaid Reads. So we are again reading from a hardware catalog created by a lovely Bertha E. Batt in 1905. Once I'm through reading some of the stories in here, this is going to be not auctioned off, raffled off basically. So I have my email address down in the description. Send me an email that you would be interested in winning the copy of this. And then I'll need your address because when I do the drawing, I'm just going to get it shipped out to you right away. You will be the lucky recipient of this. I was going to try to go through and read every story, but guess what? There's so many in here, and I've got so many more materials coming in that I'm going to read, including we're going to have recipe day. Oh my goodness gracious alive. So I'm going to be looking for some really interesting, fun, crazy recipes from, antique, vintage, jello, all that good stuff. So I've got quite a few other books and magazines and things to read for you. So I'm not going to drag this one out. So I'm probably going to do about 4 more in this series. And then this guy will be going to the winner that I select. So basically I'm going to take your name, cut it, stick them on a piece of paper. I'm going to actually have Dustin do the picking, and then I will get it sent to you, okay? So if this is something that you love and you would love to win this amazing book, be sure to send me an email, 716desertmermaid@gmail.com. I need, in the subject line, please put hardware catalog raffle, and then your name and your address for me, okay? Thank you. Now, let's get back to reading. You ready? There's going to be, oh my gosh, I've actually got 4 little quick stories for you this time around. So yeah, again, I'm skipping around in here. So this one is these are all little quick guys. So I'm going to just read them all and let's see what happens. Oh, these are so adorable. I can't stand it, right? The language and everything. So let's see what happens. Here we go. Grace's escape. Grace wore an attractive blonde. Oh, goodness gracious. An attractive blonde in the latter part of her teens came to Blossomville, the home of her uncle, to recuperate after her college days were finished and graduation over. The first week of Grace's visit was spent in a very quiet way, with light reading, daily drives through the refreshing country, and always completing the day with a visit to the post office, where some happy tidings generally awaited her. Now, while Grace was faithfully fulfilling the last act of her diurnal routine, her fair appearance unconsciously attracted the attention of Thomas Burton and Roland Ingalls, 2 young lawyers who had fled from the hot city and resided at a private boarding room near the Blossomville post office. They desired very much indeed to become acquainted with Grace, but to desire was one thing and to accomplish was another. At least they evidently thought so after many fruitless attempts towards securing their cherished desire. The giant sentences. Giant sentences. Reward generally crowns constant effort, and one day, while returning from a walk through the sylvan solitude near Grace's abode, they chanced to meet her in a rather embarrassing position where their help certainly did prove useful. A brook pierced the forest path, and passage was obtained by means of a plank stretched across from one bank to the other. But today, when Grace reached the brook, she too returning from a walk, the plank was gone. In this embarrassing position, all 3 met. Certainly the lawyers offered their assistance. While one searched for a plank, the other kept Grace company. When the plank was secured and the passage safely accomplished, Grace expressed her gratitude to them in pretty phrases, which must have required many responses, for, sorry, it's a little sketchy here. For lo, oh goodness, I thought it said lol, LOL. I'm like, no, there's no LOL back then. For lo, all 3 started for home, chatting and laughing like old friends. Life now for Grace, the lawyers, and in fact for all the young people of Blossomville, became less dull. They enjoyed themselves by having picnics, outings, hayrack rides, wow, and all sports imaginable. Oh, what a happy summer for Blossomville. Alas, pleasures cannot last forever. After weeks of jolly good times, Grace became aware that when Thomas and Roland were with her, they frequently directed scornful glances and keen approaches to each other. Besides, how fast their friendship was declining. Now Grace surmised the cause, or perhaps something in her heart warned her, and guessing the result of her observation in no favorable light, she determined to sacrifice all future pleasure in order to restore the declining friendship to its former height. Isn't she sweet? Instead of having a boyfriend, she wanted her friends to be friends. The nice girl she was. I'm going to put my glasses up. One day, Grace was sitting on the front veranda, seemingly completely enwrapped in a book, but her thoughts were far away from its content. She was recalling in memory many pleasant recollections of her visit since meeting the boys, as she was wont to call them. Then arose somber memories of their recent attitude towards each other, then a plan through which she might accomplish her aim in restoring the friendship to what it used to be, a plan hasty, perhaps unwise, yet justifiable to her. Ooh, she's up to something. Suddenly she glanced up and saw Thomas and Roland coming towards the house, each with a determined expression shadowing his countenance. Gathering up her book and hat, Grace flew into the house, spoke a few words to her amazed uncle, came out again, and quickly sauntered towards the woods. On reaching the house, the boys saw Grace just as she was turning down a lonely path. Wondering what her object could be, they followed on at a gait that undoubtedly would have won for them a prize in a sprinting contest. They reached the lonely path, followed it, hoping soon to overtake her, and it brought them to a pond into which the little brook emptied, but she whom they sought was not visible. Finally, discouraged, they were about to retrace their steps when Thomas exclaimed, "Look, Roland, there is Grace's hat floating on the water." Roland looked and said nothing. Indeed, both stood motionless, while the expression on their faces told the agitation of their minds. The news of Grace's disappearance spread rapidly. Everybody was alarmed. The woods were searched in vain, and at last everybody became resigned to the inevitable belief that Grace had been drowned. Grace gone, Blossomville had lost its charm for the lawyers, so they left for the faraway city to settle down to business, fonder friends than ever, because both were sadly affected, especially Thomas, who suddenly seemed to have lost his jolly, happy disposition, substituting a quiet, almost melancholy one instead. 5 years later, a man about 20 years of age was slowly wending his way down one of the residential streets in B. I wonder if that's, well, wherever. Suddenly, a sweet, agitated voice exclaimed, "Thomas!" He glanced up and after a few seconds of motionless surprise answered, "Grace, can I believe my senses? I thought you were drowned, gone forever." Grace laughed heartily, yet not without a little tinge of sadness, and she related to the amazed Thomas how she purposely threw her hat on the pond to produce the desired effect or result, while she hurried on in a roundabout way to the station just in time to catch the train that brought her to the faraway city. Uncle knew all about my plans, so did the station master, but they could not make it known to the villagers while you and Roland were there. Why? Grace blushed and hesitated. Oh, well, I thought I had caused unfavorable feelings between you and Roland, and I know, replied Thomas, recalling the rivalry. Where is Roland now? He's married to Ruth Bessem, childhood friend of his. But I have patiently waited for you, Grace. You shall be rewarded, was the pretty yet conceited reply. He got the girl. He waited. He got the girl. There you go. Next one. Love that found a way. When you are at liberty, Mr. Grant, I would like to speak with you. Looking up from some letters he was perusing to his bright junior partner, of whom he was so very proud, Mr. Grant replied, "Speak out your mind, my boy. I have as much time now as I ever shall have." The clerks in Mr. Grant's employ stood rather in awe of him because of his brusque manner, but underneath it all was the biggest heart and broadest mind, and those who knew him best soon discovered. He had taken Irving Marsh into his business as a junior partner on his graduating from college, his father having been an old friend, classmate of Mr. Grant. I want to speak of Miss Marvin, Mr. Grant. She has been here about a year now and has been very faithful. I should like to increase her salary, if you will permit me. After a moment's thought, Mr. Grant replied, You know what she is worth to the business more than I do, Irving, as you and Banker attend to the correspondence. Banker speaks very highly of her, says she takes a great deal of interest, and has become quite a valuable assistant to him in that circular work. How much are we paying her? $10, sir, replied Irving. And you propose to make it? 12, sir. Mr. Grant nodded his head in approval, and the junior partner returned to his desk in an outer office with a glad smile in his eyes as he thought, I can do that much for her at least. Would it were more. She is friendly and very polite, but it is very plain that beyond the bounds of common friendship I cannot step. And a shadow crept over his handsome face. It was a glorious day in early September, and after the hot, sticky days of August, the air was refreshing. There had been a heavy shower in the night, which had cleared the atmosphere, and everything looked fresh and clean. Such were Ruth Marvin's thoughts as she stood, with one little hand resting on the copy press in her little office, where she was copying letters and gazing through the open window at the cloudless sky. Then, as though waking to a pleasanter dream, she said to herself, This is September, and it is just a year ago this month I came here. Yes, glancing at the calendar, to the very day, the 5th. Such a year of happiness and pain intermingled. He helped me over those first few days, which would otherwise have been so hard. It is cruel to treat him so, but... A deep voice sounded close to her ear. A penny for your thoughts, Miss Marvin. A flush of crimson mounted to Edith Marvin's brow, and she did not at once raise her eyes. Then, in a playful mood, she turned and said, Well, where's the penny? Quick as a flash, Irving had dived into his trousers pocket and, taking a bright new penny from among the small coins, passed it to her. They are cheaply bought, Mr. Marsh, looking archly into his eyes. If this were a $5 gold piece, they would be a bargain, and it isn't Monday. Seeing that look of fond admiration coming into his eyes, which she dreaded and still delighted to see, she hastened on. I was thinking, as I looked at that beautiful sky and heard the birds singing in the trees, of... Yes? Came in a deep, earnest tone, and turning to look into his face, all her sunny humor vanished as she quickly said, Oh, no, no, take your penny back. It was too late. Her voice was choked with tears. Overcome by her emotion, he drew her to him. She did not resist. After a moment's hesitation, she lifted her head and whispered in his ear, I was dreaming of you. Then do you love me? He cried. Yes, dear. And looking into his steadfast gray eyes, continued, I cannot help it. I tried to despise you, but couldn't. There seems to have been some power stronger than mine drawing us together. I have struggled against it because you were one of the firm and I your employee. You have wealth and social standing, while I am merely your stenographer. And that is all, he said, folding her closer to him. Thank God I understand you at last. I feared some more fortunate fellow had captured my prize. Let us overlook such imprudent actions in business hours. Love have found a way. But those 3 letters in that copy proved over. They had to... Oh, goodness gracious. They had to be written over. All right. I don't know what happened on the last sentence. It's a little tiny piece, and I'm going to hang on to it. It's like they had to be written. I think that was it. Let us overlook such imprudent actions in business hours. Love had found a way. But those 3 letters in the company something or other, they had to be written. So basically it ended up with, I love you. I don't know. Okay. Anyway. Yeah, I got to make sure that I read a story that I can read the ending. Because apparently I'm so sorry. So it ends with love. That's all that counts. A sea change. The rising sun was turning the ocean to sapphire as Jack Allen shot head first off the end of the little pier. Ye gods and little fishes, he cried, coming to the surface with a mighty splurge. But this is glorious. The sleepyheads up at the hotel are missing half their lives staying abed on such a morning. Hello, here comes another sensible individual besides yours truly, a girl at that. A slim figure, clad in a black bathing suit, ran lightly down the wharf, poised for a moment on the stringer, then her clasped hands cut the water like an arrow, leaving scarcely a ripple. Good morning, mermaid. Mermaid? Said Jack with a grin as the girl's small dark head emerged within 10 feet of his own. Have you seen Father Neptune anywhere about? For an instant, a pair of astonished brown eyes gazed indignantly at Jack. Then, as if reassured at the scrutiny, they suddenly melted into laughter. I haven't seen him, she cried gaily, but it wouldn't surprise me if I did any moment. The old gentleman ought to put in an appearance out of respect to such a perfect morning, oughtn't he? Perhaps he has mislaid his trident somewhere and is hunting for it. Perhaps he's hiding under the raft. Want to race me out and see? Insinuatingly. Good, said Jack, turning swiftly. Cigars against a box of gloves. Done, responded the girl serenely. I wear sixes. First catch your hair, young lady, retorted Jack grimly. I always smoke Havanas, if you please. He settled promptly into the powerful machine-like stroke that had stood him in good stead in many a contest. But to his surprise and not a little chagrin, the lithe figure in black, swimming steadily with the clean-cut strokes, refused to be left behind, and it was only after a determined spurt that Jack pulled himself onto the raft, winner by barely a length, and stretching forth his hand, helped his panting companion up beside him. Bravo, he cried, giving the wet little fingers a hearty squeeze. I never saw a girl in my life before who could swim so well and take a defeat as coolly. I wish I was... He stopped abruptly and stared silently across the level sea. What? Said the girl demurely. I have read somewhere that mermaids could grant the wishes of men. Tell me yours. Jack wheeled with sudden resolution. Will you promise not to be offended if I tell you? Well then, years ago, to fulfill the conditions in my uncle's will, I became engaged to my second cousin. It was only a matter of form. We were hardly more than children at the time. In fact, strange as it may seem to you, I have never seen my fiancé, but the engagement has always been recognized by my family, and I have never expected to marry anyone else. I have discovered this morning for the first time, while my future wife is even now waiting at the hotel to be introduced to me, that I have made an awful mistake. Why, said the girl, darting a sudden queer look at him, isn't your cousin nice? She added as if by afterthought. Of course she is, replied Jack warmly, but she doesn't love me or I her. A man ought not to tie up two lives like that to please someone else. I have seen someone He stopped. Why don't you ask your cousin to release you? In a curious tone. No, unhappily I can't do that in honor. By the terms of the will, if we fail to marry each other, my uncle's money goes to charity. I don't care for myself, scornfully. I don't want the money. I'm not old or helpless, thank heaven, and can earn what I need, but Claire has lived in luxury all her life. She doesn't know what it means to work for a living, as she would have to do if my uncle's money goes to charity. What a foolish old will to tangle up two people's lives like that, said the girl. She held up a judicial finger, the very spirit of mischief dancing in her eyes. If the said John Allen and the said Claire Hastings, she quoted solemnly, refuse, on coming to lawful age, to carry out the terms of this instrument, then I give and bequeath the following named institutions the sums herein. Jack sprang forward to her, his face strangely white. Where did you hear that? He cried excitedly. Who are you? The young woman in black made a gesture of mock penitence. Claire Hastings, she replied, darting to the edge of the float. Like yourself, I thought I would have a solitary swim before the momentous interview I was to have after breakfast with my unknown cousin. I was surprised enough to find that someone had got ahead of me, but I recognized you at once. Auntie has a photo of you that I have sometimes examined. She was studying it, you know that. Jack suddenly obtained possession of the diminutive digits. Don't you think, cousin mine, he remarked eagerly, that we could compromise with charity? It seems a pity to upset the wishes of an old gentleman who is... How about this someone else? Responded Miss Hastings archly. I've got her hand now, replied Jack unabashed, and I mean to keep it with your permission. It's in the bond, isn't it? I suppose so, said Miss Hastings with a very red face. I imagine I can swim ashore with one hand if I have someone to help me. Oh, You little stinkers, you. And we're going to end this session right here. I will see you guys on the next one. Take care.